Let's go over to California now and talk to Daisy. Hi, Daisy.
I have a son, a 9-year-old son, and he is starting to ask questions about, the act that brings children into life. And so my question is, one, I have a couple questions, but what's the best age to discuss this, to have this conversation with him and talk to him about that? And then would it be best to have a male do this, or can I have that conversation with him? And are there any resources like books or videos that would make it kind of like an easier, kid-friendly conversation?
Yeah, good question. So you say he's 9 years old and you're mom.
Yes.
So it's certainly appropriate for you to, at that early age especially, to field his questions. I think that one of the problems would be that if mom says, oh, well, you better ask your dad about that, that can create a sense of embarrassment or, an unnecessary kind of mystery about this, that, oh, gee, mom's not comfortable explaining this. I wonder what's wrong. I wonder what's wrong about this. So I would try to avoid that and just take it in stride. And at that age where he is prepubescent, his body hasn't started changing yet, and so he's not personally moved into the time of his life where those kinds of questions become much more, relevant to kids. I think it's at a point where you can just simply say, well, when mommy and daddy got married and God blessed us with a baby, the baby was in mom's tummy, you were in my tummy, and 9 months later you were born. And that's what happens very often when people get married. God will bless them with a baby. Now that might be enough. At 9 years of age, that may be enough for him. And he's like, oh, okay, thanks. And then he's off to the next thing. Naturally, as they get older, there is more information that's necessary. And so because I know we have children listening right now, I won't go into the specifics, but I will say that as it becomes more age appropriate and more information needs to be given, just give it. Be very forthright about it. Don't be embarrassed, or if you feel embarrassed, don't allow yourself to show it. You're going to have to try. And just be natural about it. And just say, this is how God designed things. This is part of the way in which God wants families to be happy, for moms and dads to get married and they have children, and this is the way God designed it. So if you approach it that way, I think it can be very natural, and you don't need to give unnecessary details at an earlier age. But as they get older, you can do so. Now, you asked about having a male. By male, I'm assuming, and I don't want to assume too much here, so correct me if I'm wrong, but you're married, right? So your husband would be in a position to be able to talk to him as he gets older?
So it's a little tricky just because I am married, but it's a stepdad. And so they have a pretty good relationship, but I feel like that conversation, there's also like the language difference, because my husband speaks mostly Spanish, and he, so there's just a little bit. And then his dad doesn't necessarily have the same views as I do.
I see.
So I'd rather have the conversation. So I just wanted to make sure that, it is something that is okay for me to do. But at the same time, he is asking more detailed questions. I already did respond to him the way that you said it, like that first time, where, this is kind of like what happens. And he's asking more details. So if I just approach it, like you said, naturally, then that should be fine. Like, I don't want to say too much, or should I say, hey, you know what, this is a conversation we can have when you're a little bit older, or do I just answer the question?
Well, it depends on several things. So it's not, well, I shouldn't say not. It didn't used to be, I don't think, all that common for a 9-year-old to be asking more specific questions. I don't remember even having any of those questions when I was 9 years old. By the time I was 12 years old, I certainly did have those questions. So there's not that big of a difference in age, but maybe because of the culture that we're in now and the bombardment that comes at us from all different directions on this topic, he may be at the point now, for better or for worse, where he needs to know this information. And better that he learn it straight from you as opposed to the garbled version that he'll get from his friends. So, yeah, maybe this is the time. It would have been nicer that you could have waited another couple of years, but if that's not possible, then I would have the conversation with him now, and I would sit down with him, and you, I would encourage you, just be very loving and forthright, and don't be embarrassed. And don't phrase any of this in a way that would make him think like there's something wrong with this or there's something to be embarrassed about. You want to preserve his innocence and you want to preserve his modesty. That's very important. But you can still explain the situation in a clear and careful way that will protect his modesty. So you can do both, and I would encourage you to do that. Now, what I absolutely 1,000,000,000% would urge you not to do, don't go down the road that some people do, and that is, don't show pictures, don't inflame the imagination with unnecessary details, don't introduce this child into the world of what. Some people, they say, well, let's just show you what this is. No, don't do that. That is an extremely destructive way of trying to do something. That's not the way to do it. So in your own maternal, loving way, you tell him the truth, you explain it, and answer any questions that he got. So that way he's going to know, okay, this is not something dirty or bad. This isn't something shameful. God made this, and God made it for a very important reason. And you can talk to him about the importance of purity and chastity and all those things. And maybe it's a conversation you'll have over the course of several sittings. It doesn't all necessarily have to happen all at once. When I gave my boys, my wife would give the girls the talk, and I would give my boys the talk. And usually they would be about 11 years old, more or less. And I would usually give it in a couple different installments. The first talk, I would talk about the bigger picture, growing up and your body changing. And isn't this interesting? And how, how men, they grow beards and boys don't have beards. But when you get to be a man, you'll grow a beard and such. And kind of talk about the big picture and get any questions about that out of the way. And then maybe, the following week or so, have another talk. You remember that what we were talking about before? And I was explaining about how the bodies change and this is why they change and how good that is and how you can look forward to it and all that. Well, there's more to it. I want to tell you more about that. So I found that with my boys, at least, doing it in a couple of stages was helpful because I wasn't giving them a data dump, so to speak, all at once. Here's everything you need to know from A to Z. I kind of poured a foundation. And then when they were ready, a week or so later, then we added more to it. So that's the way I did it. It doesn't mean it's the best way, but it worked for me. And I think it might be worth your consideration. Thank you. Oh, resources. That's right. Get in touch with Steve Wood at dads.org. He's a really, I would just call him a flat-out expert when it comes to helping dads and moms to some extent to be good parents. And he's got a really good book called Legacy, which is on fathering your children. And by that, what I mean is being a good father to your children. And I believe there's a section in the book on how to do that, how to cultivate a relationship with your son so that you can have that kind of a talk. But he has other resources that are available on that topic. So just go to dads.org and you'll find some good stuff there. Thanks for the call. I appreciate it.
For more of The Patrick Madrid Show, visit relevantradio.com/Patrick.